You know that feeling when the road gets rocky? When something unexpected hits and you just feel, well, blindsided.
Totally.
Maybe it's a personal setback, like a sudden job loss, or maybe a relationship challenge that leaves you questioning everything.
Or even just a pileup of tough days.
Exactly. Just those times that pile up. We all face these moments, right? But what if you could not just endure them, but actually grow from them?
Yeah.
What if you had an inner blueprint sort of for navigating that emotional pain and actually emerging stronger?
Right.
Because some people, it seems, they just navigate these challenges with this remarkable ability. They don't just get through it. They come out stronger, maybe even wiser.
That's the goal, isn't it?
It really is. So today we're diving deep into resilience, not just as some abstract concept, but as a practical, learnable ability.
Okay.
Think of it maybe as your inner superpower or like your mental rainy day fund.
I like that. A rainy day fund.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Something that helps you not just bounce back to where you were, because sometimes that's not even possible.
Right.
But actually bounce forward into a new, maybe more robust version of yourself.
That bounce forward idea is crucial. And yeah, we've pulled together a truly fascinating stack of research for this deep dive, really custom tailored for you listening.
Okay, what have we got?
Well, we're drawing from some really recent psychological studies. There's one quite poignant examination of childhood adversity, looking at young adults in Pakistan.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, and alongside that, broader insights on effective coping strategies, especially when we're talking about times of crisis.
Makes sense.
And crucially, we've integrated several science-backed guides that offer concrete, actionable ways you can actually cultivate and strengthen this vital trait.
So the how-to.
Exactly, the how-to. We'll be looking at what resilience truly means, why it matters so profoundly for your mental and physical health, and maybe most importantly, how you can actively build it. We're drawing on practical, evidence-based techniques, things like those found in cognitive behavioral therapy.
Ah, CBT.
Yep, CBT, and also mindfulness practices, things you can actually start doing.
So our mission today really is to equip you with a comprehensive blueprint, a way to build your own resilience.
A blueprint.
So you can confront emotional pain more skillfully, adapt positively to whatever life sends your way, and ultimately maybe find growth even in the most challenging circumstances.
Absolutely. That's the aim.
Yeah.
So maybe let's start by truly unpacking what we mean by resilience.
That's a good idea, because it gets thrown around a lot.
It does.
Yeah.
And it's so much more than just a buzzword. Often people think it just means being tough or, unfeeling.
Right, like having a stiff upper lip.
Exactly. But that's not it at all. Our sources, including places like Verywell Mind and Psychology Today, they offer a really clear, multifaceted definition. They describe resilience as the ability to adapt, recover, and grow stronger in the face of adversity, trauma, tragedy, threats, or even significant sources of stress. The key word there is adapt. It's a profoundly dynamic process, not some static state you just have or don't have.
Dynamic, okay.
And the American Psychological Association, in their guide, The Road to Resilience, they add another layer. They clarify that resilience is about successfully adapting when facing these difficulties.
Successfully adapting.
Yes. It's not about avoiding difficulty or distress altogether. I mean, trying to do that often backfires, right? It can be pretty maladaptive.
Yeah, avoidance doesn't usually solve things.
Exactly. Instead, it's about how you navigate through the distress, how you engage with it, and critically, how you respond to it.
So it's not about pretending things aren't hard, right?
Really not.
It's not about being tough in that rigid way where you just power through and ignore the pain.
No.
It sounds like it's much more about being flexible, like bending without breaking. Is that the core idea?
That's precisely the core idea. You hit the nail on the head. Resilient individuals demonstrate what our sources call mental, emotional, and behavioral flexibility.
Okay.
Think of that classic analogy, a majestic tree that bends with the wind. It doesn't break, right?
Right.
But a rigid, unyielding branch, that might just snap in a storm.
Yeah.
But the one that sways and adapts will endure. This flexibility allows them to not just withstand the storm, but to return to their original form, or sometimes even a stronger one, once the duress is gone.
So it's pliability, not rigidity.
Pliability, exactly. It's about responding to change rather than resisting it to your own detriment.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
So,
why does this matter for everyone? Why should we all be thinking about building this flexibility?
Well, the widespread benefits of cultivating resilience are really profound. I mean, they impact basically every single area of your life, often in ways you might not immediately connect. Okay, firstly, it leads to significantly enhanced mental health. That's a big one. Resilient individuals experience less chronic stress, less anxiety, less depression.
Wow.
Yeah. They show better emotional regulation, meaning they can manage their feelings rather than being overwhelmed by them.
Okay.
And they tend to maintain a more positive outlook even when facing really significant challenges.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Imagine two people facing, say, a sudden job loss. The less resilient person might spiral into despair, maybe self-blame, experiencing prolonged anxiety.
Yeah, I can picture that.
The more resilient person, though, they'll still feel the initial pain, absolutely.
Right.
But they'll acknowledge those feelings and then pivot towards problem solving. They maintain a sense of hope and agency, and they actively seek support. They manage the emotion and then focus on action.
So they don't get stuck in the feeling.
Exactly. They process it and move through it. And beyond mental health, resilience also significantly improves physical health.
Really?
Well, research indicates that being more resilient can actually reduce the negative impacts of stress on the body.
The mind-body connection.
Totally. This translates to lower rates of chronic diseases, things like cardiovascular conditions, because we know chronic stress is a major contributor to those issues.
Right.
You also see stronger immune system function. I mean, resilient individuals might literally get sick less often.
Interesting.
And it's fascinating. Resilient people often engage in healthier lifestyle behaviors more naturally. Things like regular exercise, balanced nutrition. It's almost like an extension of their proactive approach to life.
So it feeds into itself.
It does. It further supports their physical well-being. They're not just coping, they're actively nurturing themselves.
Okay, so mental health, physical health. What else?
Thirdly, resilience fosters stronger relationships.
How so?
Well, individuals who are resilient tend to be more adaptable in their interactions. They're better at resolving conflicts and more skilled at fostering deep, supportive social connections. They're able to seek and offer support more effectively, creating this stronger interpersonal fabric around them.
Okay.
Like, consider a disagreement with a loved one. A resilient person is probably more likely to engage in constructive dialogue, actively listen, try to find common ground, rather than just retreating or escalating the conflict.
Yeah, that makes sense. Less reactivity.
Exactly. Less reactivity, more thoughtful response. And finally, for those focusing on their professional lives, resilience is an invaluable asset for career success.
Right. The workplace can be stressful.
Absolutely. Resilient individuals are simply better equipped to handle workplace stress, navigate failures, and adapt to change. This could be anything from bouncing back after a rejected proposal to skillfully pivoting their career path during, say, an industry downturn.
And that leads to better outcomes.
Directly. It often leads to greater professional achievement and, just as importantly, satisfaction.
So it really isn't just about surviving, like we said at the start. It's about thriving in all these different aspects of life, relationships, work, even your physical health.
Exactly.
It paints a picture of a really holistic benefit, doesn't it? It feels like resilience is truly foundational to overall well-being.
It absolutely is foundational. Couldn't agree more. And this brings us to a really crucial area of understanding: how our early life experiences can profoundly shape an individual's resilience, or sometimes lack thereof.
Ah, the childhood stuff.
Yeah. Our deep dives included a really powerful study by Praveen and colleagues from 2024. It was conducted in Pakistan, and it focused specifically on adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs.
ACs, I've heard that term. What exactly does it cover?
So the study defines ACEs as any type of physical and mental abuse, neglect, or mistreatment of children that puts them in danger both personally and through indirect means.
Okay, so danger meaning.
Both immediate physical or emotional harm and also the long-term risk to their development and overall well-being. It's broad.
Got it.
And the study highlights 5 basic forms which are pretty widely recognized: physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, and then physical and emotional neglect.
Can you give examples? Like, what's emotional neglect?
Sure. Physical abuse is maybe more obvious,
Right.
hitting, severe corporal punishment. But emotional neglect might be less visible, yet just as damaging. It could be a parent consistently ignoring a child's emotional needs, dismissing their feelings, or failing to provide that essential sense of safety and belonging.
Wow. That
Yeah.
sounds subtle but deep.
It is. And it's estimated that a really significant portion of children worldwide experience some form of adversity. The numbers might even be underestimated because definitions and reporting vary so much across cultures.
Yeah.
These experiences aren't just isolated incidents, They can radically affect a child's emotional, cognitive, social, even their neurobiological development. They literally lay down pathways that influence adulthood.
This is where it gets really interesting and, yeah, frankly, a bit sobering. Because the impact of these early experiences, like you said, they can echo through our lives for years, even decades.
They really can.
It's not just a childhood problem. It's a foundational one that can shape our adult struggles. So when the study talks about psychopathological symptoms, what exactly do they mean by that for our listeners?
Yeah.
Just so we're clear.
It's an excellent clarification. Good point. So by psychopathological symptoms, we're referring to measurable signs of mental distress or indicators of potential mental health disorders.
Yeah.
This includes things like persistent feelings of sadness and hopelessness, associated with depression, or that excessive worry and nervousness we see in anxiety disorders, or just pervasive feelings of overwhelm and tension that we generally label as stress.
Things that interfere with life.
Exactly. The kinds of distress that can significantly impact your daily functioning and quality of life.
Got it. And the study found a link.
A very strong link. The research from Praveen et al. Reveals a significant positive correlation between ACEs and the psychopathological symptoms like depression, anxiety, and stress in young adults.
Positive correlation means?
It means that the more ACEs an individual experiences during childhood, the higher the likelihood of developing these symptoms in adulthood. There's a cumulative effect that's quite pronounced.
Wow.
And what's particularly striking in this specific study is the high correlation they found between emotional maltreatment and psychopathology.
Emotional again. Why is that so impactful?
Well, you might wonder, right? Emotional abuse can be especially detrimental, partly because it often doesn't leave immediate visible signs, unlike physical abuse.
True.
It's insidious. It kind of chips away at a child's self-worth, their sense of safety, their ability to form healthy attachments over time. It can remain unrecognized for a long time, having this silent but profound impact on the developing brain and sense of self.
That's heavy.
It is. And this phenomenon is supported by something called the stress sensitization theory.
Stress sensitization.
Yeah. Imagine your nervous system is like an alarm system. After early adversity, it's as if that alarm system gets set to hypersensitive mode. So even a tiny rustle outside makes it blare later in life. This theory basically posits that past adversity can make an individual's central nervous system continuously hyperactive and sensitized.
So they overreact to stress later.
Essentially, yes. It can lead to increased symptoms of depression and anxiety, even in response to relatively minor current stressors. Their body and mind are kind of primed to react strongly because of those past experiences.
Okay, let's really unpack this because it's a critical point. It sounds pretty deterministic, like childhood trauma automatically leads to adult problems.
But that's where the nuance comes in.
Right, so it's not a direct, inevitable line from childhood trauma to adult challenges, is that right?
Exactly.
There's a powerful protective factor in the middle. If someone experienced ACEs, it doesn't mean they're destined for a lifelong struggle.
Absolutely not destined.
This is where resilience enters the picture as a game changer.
You're absolutely right to pick up on that crucial point, and honestly, it's one of the most hopeful findings in this area. The same study by Praveen et al. Found that psychological resilience played a partially mediating role in a relationship between ACEs and psychopathological symptoms.
Partially mediating, what does that mean practically?
It means that while ACEs can indeed reduce an individual's baseline resilience, actively enhancing that resilience can help manage or even mitigate and prevent the development of depression, anxiety, and stress, despite a history of adversity.
So resilience acts like a buffer.
A buffer, exactly. The researchers explicitly state, and this is so important, not everyone who experienced traumatic events as a child will go on to develop psychopathology.
That's huge.
It is. It underscores resilience as a preventative aspect, a crucial buffer that helps individuals process and integrate their experiences in a way that fosters growth rather than leading to ongoing suffering. It truly is a key message of hope and agency.
That's incredibly empowering. So if you're listening and thinking, I wasn't born with this, or maybe my childhood wasn't perfect, am I doomed? The profound good news is you can absolutely cultivate it.
Yes.
It's not some fixed trait you either have or don't have. It's a skill.
Precisely. Our sources, including The Road to Resilience from the APA, strongly affirm that resilience is not a trait that people either have or do not have.
Okay.
It involves behaviors, thoughts, and actions that can be learned and developed in anyone. This is such a fundamental concept. It empowers all of us to take an active role in strengthening our ability to bounce back or bounce forward, regardless of our past.
Okay, so if it involves behaviors, thoughts, and actions, what are they? What do resilient people actually do? What are the
That's
characteristics?
a great question. So what exactly are these behaviors, thoughts, and actions? Our sources, particularly Very Well Mind and the Psychology of Resilience, identify several core characteristics that are common among resilient individuals.
Let's hear them.
Okay, first, and this one is quite foundational, strong problem-solving skills.
Makes sense.
Resilient people generally have the ability to calmly and rationally look at a problem and envision a successful solution. They don't get paralyzed by the size of the challenge.
No, they do that.
They tend to break down overwhelming challenges into smaller, more manageable steps. This makes even daunting tasks feel achievable.
Like chunking it down.
Exactly. For example, if faced with a sudden financial crisis, a resilient individual wouldn't just panic. They'd likely map out their expenses, maybe explore alternative income sources, perhaps seek advice on budgeting, tackling each piece systematically.
Okay. Problem solving. What's next?
Second, and this one is truly crucial, strong social connections.
Ah, the support network.
Yes, having a network of friends, family, community members who offer support. It's one of the most significant predictors of resilience. These connections help individuals feel understood, validated, and they provide practical assistance when needed. It's like having a safety net during tough times.
Yeah, definitely.
Imagine someone experiencing that job loss we mentioned earlier. A strong social network means they have people to talk to, maybe people who know about new opportunities, or even just someone to offer a comforting meal or listen.
That practical help matters too.
Immensely. Third is cultivating a survivor mentality.
Survivor, not victim.
Precisely. Resilient individuals tend to view themselves as survivors rather than victims of circumstance. They focus on positive outcomes and actively look for ways to resolve problems, even when the situation feels difficult or unavoidable.
How does that shift happen?
It's a mindset shift, and it's incredibly powerful. Instead of asking, why me? This always happens to me. A resilient person might frame it as, okay, this happened. What can I learn from it? What's my next step? It puts them back in the driver's seat mentally.
Agency. What's fourth?
The fourth characteristic is emotional regulation.
Managing feelings.
Exactly. It's the capacity to recognize, understand, and effectively manage your emotional responses. Resilient people can generally stay calmer under stress and focus on solutions rather than getting swept up in, emotional reactivity.
Okay.
They acknowledge their feelings, anger, sadness, fear, but without becoming completely overwhelmed by them.
Example.
Sure. In a tense meeting, right? Someone with strong emotional regulation might feel their heart start to race, but they choose to take a deep breath, pause, and then articulate their point calmly, rather than just lashing out in frustration.
Controlling the reaction.
Controlling the reaction, yes, while still acknowledging the feeling. Fifth, and very closely related, is self-compassion.
Being kind to yourself.
Yes. Being kind, forgiving, and gentle with yourself, especially during hardships. It's about accepting your emotions without judgment, which is so vital for finding the strength to keep going.
That sounds crucial.
It is. When you treat yourself with warmth and understanding honestly, the way you'd treat a dear friend who's struggling it, helps you find that inner resolve to persevere. It's not self-pity. It's a powerful tool for self-nurturing and building strength.
Okay. And is there a final one?
Yes. The sixth key characteristic is a strong sense of control. This is often referred to in psychology as having an internal locus of control.
Internal locus of control.
It means believing that your actions will affect the outcome of the event. Believing you have the power to make choices that impact your situation and your future.
So it's not about controlling everything.
No, definitely not. Some factors are absolutely outside our personal control, right?
Yeah.
But resilient individuals tend to focus on their agency, what they can influence, rather than dwelling on what they cannot change.
Like focusing on your response.
Exactly. For example, you can't control a global pandemic, but you can control how you protect yourself and your community, how you adapt your daily life, how you manage your information intake. Focus on your sphere of influence.
These aren't just abstract ideas, are they? They feel like active ways of engaging with the world and with yourself.
They really are.
For instance, that sense of control doesn't mean controlling everything, like you said, natural disasters, other people's decisions.
Impossible.
But it means recognizing your agency in how you respond to whatever happens. It's shifting your mindset from being a passive recipient to an active participant.
Beautifully put. Active participant.
So how does focusing on these characteristics actually help us build resilience? What's the psychological mechanism at play there?
That's a great question. When we consciously focus on cultivating these characteristics, we're essentially um, rewiring our brain and our behavioral patterns.
Rewiring.
Yeah. For example, practicing problem-solving skills actually strengthens the neural pathways in our brain associated with executive function and planning.
Oh.
This makes us more efficient and less flustered under pressure. Practicing emotional regulation techniques literally changes how our amygdala, the brain's fear center, responds to perceived threats. It can reduce its reactivity over time.
So you become less reactive physically?
Yes, less physiologically hijacked by stress. And developing self-compassion. That shifts our internal dialogue from harsh self-criticism to supportive self-talk that builds psychological safety and the courage to try again after a setback.
So it's like reinforcing positive habits.
Exactly. It's a continuous process of reinforcing positive cognitive and behavioral habits. You're building mental muscle.
Okay, that makes sense. So if those are the characteristics, what about the actual tools we use in the moment? The coping strategies?
Right, the tools. And with that understanding of resilience's core components, we can now look at the specific tools you can use to navigate those tough times.
Okay.
Coping strategies.
Okay.
Our source, Coping Strategies and Resilience in Times of Crisis, by Jamil and Martinez, defines these pretty simply as cognitive and behavioral efforts individuals employ to manage stressors.
Cognitive and behavioral efforts.
Yeah. They are basically the adaptive mechanisms we consciously or sometimes unconsciously use to navigate challenging situations. Could be a minor frustration or a major life upheaval.
And are there different types?
Yes. The study highlights 3 main types of coping strategies. First, there's problem-focused coping.
Tackling the problem head on.
Exactly. This involves actively addressing the stressor itself, seeking solutions, taking concrete steps to change the actual situation. It's a direct, hands-on approach.
Like making a plan.
Precisely. If you're stressed about a looming deadline at work, problem-focused coping would involve creating a detailed task list, maybe prioritizing assignments, perhaps asking for an extension or delegating some tasks. You're tackling the root cause of the stress.
Okay. Problem-focused. What's the second type?
Second, we have emotion-focused coping.
Okay, different angle.
Very different. This is about regulating one's emotional responses to the stressor rather than directly changing the problem itself.
So managing the feel.
Managing the feeling, exactly. Examples include seeking social support from friends, just to vent or feel understood, engaging in relaxation techniques like meditation or deep breathing, or maybe reframing the situation positively to alleviate the distress.
When would you use that?
This is particularly useful when the stressor is actually beyond your immediate control. Think about grieving a loss or dealing with an unchangeable medical diagnosis. You can't change the situation, so you focus on managing your internal state.
Right. Okay. And the third type?
And third, though it's maybe less commonly discussed in everyday conversation, is meaning-focused coping.
Meaning-focused.
Yeah. This involves finding purpose, meaning, or even growth in the face of adversity. Often it draws on spiritual or existential frameworks. It's about transforming the experience itself, finding value in it somehow.
Can you give an example of that?
Sure. After surviving, say, a natural disaster, a community might come together, dedicating themselves to rebuilding. In that shared ordeal, they might find new strength, new unity, a new sense of purpose. They find meaning in the recovery process itself.
Wow. Finding meaning in hardship.
Exactly. It can be incredibly powerful for long-term adaptation.
So problem-focused, emotion-focused, meaning-focused. It's like having different tools in a toolbox, right?
That's an excellent analogy.
Sometimes you need a hammer, sometimes a screwdriver, sometimes something else entirely, depending on the problem. No single tool works for every situation.
Absolutely.
And it sounds like knowing which tool to pick, or maybe using a combination, is part of being resilient.
That's perfectly said. And it leads us right to a crucial distinction. Adaptive versus maladaptive coping.
Right, helpful versus unhelpful strategies.
Exactly. Jamil and Martinez highlight that adaptive coping strategies are those that promote effective problem-solving, emotional regulation, and social support seeking. These are the constructive approaches.
Like the ones we've been talking about.
Yes, things like confronting stressors directly when possible, engaging in positive problem-solving, practicing self-care, reaching out for help. These consistently enhance resilience and psychological well-being. They lead to positive long-term outcomes.
Okay, and maladaptive.
Conversely, maladaptive coping strategies are those that exacerbate stress, impair functioning, and hinder effective adaptation.
Like what?
These include things like denial, pretending the problem doesn't exist, active avoidance of the problem, substance abuse is a common one. or engaging in self-destructive behaviors.
Things that might feel better short term?
Precisely. They might offer temporary relief or a distraction in the moment, but they inevitably lead to long-term negative consequences. Things like increased distress, damaged relationships, maybe social isolation.
Right.
For example, repeatedly binge-watching TV or overeating to avoid dealing with a financial stressor might feel good momentarily, but it doesn't solve the underlying problem and can actually create new ones.
Yeah, definitely.
So the key takeaway here, as you suggested with the toolbox analogy, is that flexibility in coping is essential. Individuals often employ a combination of strategies. They adapt their approach depending on the specific stressor, what resources they have available, and their perceived ability to cope. It really is about choosing the right tool, or a combination of tools, for the job at hand.
Okay. That distinction feels really important. Choose wisely.
Choose wisely indeed. Now, let's connect these coping styles even more deeply to resilience, because there's a fascinating link with social support here, too.
Oh, interesting. How does that work?
Well, there was another study by Cao and colleagues from 2024, this one focusing on Chinese youth. And they found that coping styles mediate the correlation between social support and resilience.
Okay, mediate the correlation. Unpack that for us.
Right. What it means is that social support doesn't just directly boost resilience on its own. It also significantly influences how you cope with stress, which then, in turn, impacts your level of resilience.
So it's like a chain reaction.
Exactly. A powerful chain reaction. The study specifically identified what they called mature coping styles. Things like active problem solving and seeking help when needed.
The adaptive ones.
Pretty much, yeah. These mature styles were significantly and positively related to both having strong social support and having higher resilience.
Okay.
So imagine a young person facing a lot of academic stress. If they have strong social support from family, friends, teachers, they're more likely to engage in mature coping, like asking a teacher for help, forming a study group, seeking advice on time management.
Right, using resources.
Exactly. And that engagement with mature coping then directly enhances their resilience to future academic challenges.
Makes sense. What about the other side?
Well, on the other hand, they looked at immature coping styles, things like avoidance, just fantasizing about solutions without taking action or engaging in self-blame.
Maladaptive ones?
Generally, yes. These showed a significant negative relationship with both social support and resilience.
So less support, more immature coping, less resilience.
That's the pattern they found. So if that same student lacks social support, they might be more prone to procrastinating, just dreaming of a perfect grade without actually studying, or maybe just blaming themselves for not being smart enough.
Oh.
This pattern leads to reduced resilience over time.
Wow.
So this study offers a really key insight. Your social support system can actually encourage you to adopt more mature, effective coping styles and discourage the less helpful, immature ones.
So it's not passive.
No.
Yeah.
It's a powerful feedback loop. Supportive relationships don't just offer direct comfort, they also actively teach and reinforce healthier ways of navigating challenges.
So it's a ripple effect. Your support system can actually help you learn better ways to deal with stress, which then makes you stronger in the long run.
That's a perfect way to describe it, a ripple effect.
That's incredibly practical. It's not just about emotional comfort, though that's vital. It's about skill building by proxy, almost.
Yeah, I like that, skill building by proxy.
And speaking of practical, this is where we get to the how-to, right? This is exciting because, as we've established, resilience isn't something you either have or you don't. It's a muscle you can train. There are science-backed pathways to strengthen it.
Absolutely. And this is where we can really empower listeners. One of the most prominent and effective therapeutic approaches for building resilience is cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT.
Right, CBT. Heard a lot about that.
Yeah, it's very well researched. As described in one of our sources, How Cognitive Behavioral Therapy, CBT, Supports Resilience, its core idea is actually elegantly simple.
What is it?
It's that our thoughts, our feelings, and our behaviors are all deeply interconnected. They influence each other constantly.
Okay. Thoughts, feelings, behaviors.
Yeah. And the key insight of CBT is that by identifying and strategically changing unhelpful thought patterns, we can promote healthier emotional responses and more adaptive behaviors.
Change the thoughts to change the feelings and actions.
Essentially, yes.
Right.
By doing that, you lay a solid foundation for resilience. It's very practical, very action-focused. It aims to empower you to take control of your internal experience.
Okay, so what are some specific CBT techniques someone could apply?
Great question. Let's look at some specific techniques you can actually use. First, there's reframing negative thoughts. This is often done through something called thought journaling.
Thought journaling, how does that work?
Well, it involves first identifying those automatic negative thoughts. ANT, sometimes they're called, that just pop into your head.
Like, I'm going to mess this up.
Exactly. Or, I'm such a failure after making a mistake. We all have them. The key in CBT is then to challenge these thoughts. You ask yourself, is this thought 100% true? What evidence do I have to support it? And maybe, more importantly, what evidence contradicts it?
Looking for the counter evidence.
Yes. Once you've challenged it, you actively work to reframe it into a more balanced, realistic perspective. So, I'm going to mess this up could become, okay, I've prepared for this, and even if I stumble a bit, it's a learning opportunity, not a catastrophe.
So it's not about just thinking positive Pollyanna style.
Not at all. It's about realistic, evidence-based thinking. This practice reduces emotional distress and helps you see more options, more possibilities.
Okay. Reframing negative thoughts. What else?
Second, CBT helps in developing problem-solving skills and setting realistic goals. We talked about problem-solving being a characteristic of resilient people.
Right.
Well, CBT teaches you a structured way to do this.
Yeah.
You learn to break down those overwhelming challenges into smaller, actionable steps, chunking it down again.
Okay.
So if your overarching goal is something huge, like get healthier, which can feel totally daunting.
Yeah, where do you even start?
Exactly. You
Yeah.
break it into manageable steps. Maybe walk 20 minutes 3 times this week, or add 1 serving of vegetables to my lunch each day. Tiny, achievable steps. Setting short-term milestones, tracking your progress, and this is important, celebrating the small wins builds confidence and prevents that feeling of paralysis. It makes the journey feel possible.
Small wins add up. Makes sense. Is there a third CBT technique?
Yes, a very powerful one called behavioral activation.
Behavioral activation?
Yeah. This means intentionally engaging in meaningful or pleasant activities, especially when your motivation is really low.
Wait, do things even if you don't feel like it?
Exactly. The core idea here, which can feel counterintuitive, is that action often leads to positive emotions, not the other way around. We often wait to feel motivated before we act.
Right.
Behavioral activation flips that. If a full workout feels overwhelming when you're feeling down, you start with just a 5-minute walk. The act of doing something meaningful, however small, helps break the cycle of inactivity and negative emotions. It creates momentum for positive change.
Action first, feeling follows.
That's the principle. It's about scheduling and acting on these small steps to kickstart a virtuous cycle, rather than waiting for inspiration that might not come.
Those CBT techniques sound really practical. It's like being your own detective spotting the thoughts, and then your own architect rebuilding them and taking action.
That's a great way to think about it, detective and architect.
So what about mindfulness? We hear a lot about that too. How does that fit into building resilience?
Mindfulness. Yes, it's incredibly powerful for building resilience, as highlighted in another source, how mindfulness builds resilience, what science says. Mindfulness at its core is about active awareness.
Paying attention.
Paying attention on purpose, in the present moment, and non-judgmentally. Observing your thoughts and feelings without automatically reacting to them. This creates a crucial pause, a space for new perspectives.
A pause.
Yes. That pause helps you stay present and manage emotional overwhelm rather than getting swept away by your habitual reactions.
Okay, so how do you practice it? What are the techniques?
Let's dive into some specific mindfulness techniques. First, and perhaps most fundamental, is mindful breathing.
Just focusing on the breath.
Pretty much. Intentionally bringing your attention to the physical sensations of your breath, maybe the air moving through your nostrils, the rise and fall of your chest or stomach. It serves as a gentle anchor when your mind inevitably wanders.
And that helps with stress.
Studies show it can effectively reduce negative emotion. When stress starts creeping in, taking just a few conscious, mindful breaths can ground you. It interrupts that escalating physiological stress response. It's a simple, portable, immediate tool you can use anywhere.
Okay. Mindful breathing. What else?
Then there's body scan meditation.
Body scan.
Yeah. In this practice, you systematically focus your attention on each part of your body in turn, maybe starting from your toes and moving up to the top of your head. You simply notice any sensations, tingling, warmth, tightness, tension, without judging them.
Just noticing.
Just noticing. And as you exhale, you might consciously choose to let go of any tension you find. This practice is linked to greater well-being and less reactivity to stress, partly because strong feelings often manifest physically, right? Knots in the stomach, tight shoulders.
Oh, yeah.
By becoming more aware of your body's subtle signals, you can also make healthier choices, recognizing when you need rest or a break or maybe some gentle movement.
Tuning into the body. Got it. Are there deeper aspects to mindfulness, too?
Yes, definitely. A deeper philosophical aspect of mindfulness that profoundly builds resilience is understanding impermanence.
Impermanence. Everything changes.
Exactly. By curiously observing that nothing lasts forever, that emotions, thoughts, even external circumstances are in a continual process of flux, you encourage a healthy sense of unattachment.
Not attachment.
Yeah, not indifference, but rather not clinging so tightly to things being a certain way or pushing away unpleasant experiences quite so forcefully. This helps distinguish healthy reflection on the past from rumination, that obsessive rethinking that keeps us trapped in past pain or future worries.
Ah, rumination. That's a killer.
It really can be. Understanding impermanence enhances distress tolerance. It allows you to persevere longer in stressful tasks because you know the feeling won't last forever, and it helps you accept that difficult times too will eventually pass. This too shall pass.
Okay, impermanence. That's a big one.
It is. And finally, related to that is a key concept called equanimity.
Equanimity. What's that?
It's about cultivating a balanced mind. A mind that's centered, even amidst chaos, kind of poised between desire, wanting things, and aversion, pushing things away.
Finding the middle ground.
Finding the middle ground, exactly. It helps you remain stable and non-reactive despite challenging circumstances. It allows you to, as one source metaphorically puts it, ride the waves of life rather than being constantly thrown off balance by them.
How does that look in practice?
Well, in practice, it might look like acknowledging a strong feeling, say, of disappointment without letting it completely consume you. Instead of clinging to the desire for things to have turned out differently or forcefully pushing away the unpleasant feeling, you simply observe it with some distance. You recognize its transient nature, and you maintain a calm, centered presence even amidst that internal storm.
Staying centered.
Yes, this balanced perspective, this equanimity, is incredibly liberating and a cornerstone of deep resilience.
Wow. Okay, so CBT and mindfulness offer some really concrete pathways. Are there other science-backed strategies we should know about?
Yes, absolutely. Beyond CBT and mindfulness, there are several other science-backed strategies for emotional mastery and growth that directly contribute to stronger resilience. They often overlap and reinforce each other.
Like what? Give us some more tools for the toolbox.
Okay, one vital strategy we touched on earlier is to actively practice self-compassion.
Right. Being kind to yourself. How do you do that?
Well, there are specific techniques. One is called the self-compassion break. It has 3 steps. First, be mindful of your suffering. Acknowledge it, like, ouch, this is a moment of suffering.
Okay. Acknowledge the pain.
Second, remember you're not alone in experiencing such pain. Recognize your shared humanity. Suffering is a part of life. Other people feel this way too. This combats isolation.
Connect to others.
And third, actively be kind to yourself. Offer yourself words of comfort. Maybe place a hand over your heart. Use phrases like, may I accept myself as I am, or may I be kind to myself in this moment.
So mindful, connected, kind.
Exactly. Another simple trick is just asking, how would I treat a friend? Often, we're much harsher on ourselves than we'd ever be to someone we care about. Comparing that can be eye-opening.
Yeah, that's true.
And some sources suggest writing a self-compassionate letter to yourself about a struggle you feel ashamed or inadequate about. Write it from the perspective of an unconditionally loving friend. It can be profoundly healing.
Okay, self-compassion. What else?
Next up, cultivate forgiveness.
Forgiveness. That's a tough one sometimes.
It can be incredibly tough. But the research suggests it's primarily for your own mental and physical health, not necessarily for the offender's sake. It's about letting go of that corrosive resentment and ill will that weighs you down.
So how do you start?
It often starts with acknowledging what happened and the hurt it caused, but then making a conscious commitment to release the grudge. The process encourages you to find opportunities for growth in the experience, maybe learning about your boundaries, developing empathy. Some practices even involve trying to generate feelings of compassion towards the person who wronged you, which can surprisingly help you get unstuck from bitterness.
Releasing the burden.
Exactly. Releasing the burden for yourself. Another powerful technique is to actively change the narrative or find silver linings.
Reframing again.
Similar to reframing negative thoughts, but maybe broader. When something upsetting happens, instead of just ruminating on the negative aspects, you consciously try to reframe the experience by listing any positive aspects, lessons learned, or unexpected benefits.
Finding the good in the bad.
Essentially, yes. It helps you gain new insights and regain a sense of control over the meaning you make of events. For example, a professional setback might, in retrospect, open the door to a more fulfilling career path you wouldn't have considered otherwise. Or a difficult conversation with a friend might bring important issues into the open, ultimately leading to deeper understanding and strengthening the bond.
So looking for the growth opportunity.
Exactly. This practice is apparently particularly beneficial for those with a naturally pessimistic outlook. It helps retrain the brain.
Okay. What else is in the toolkit?
Develop a growth mindset. This concept comes from Carol Dweck's work.
Growth mindset versus fixed mindset.
Precisely. A growth mindset means embracing challenges as opportunities for growth and learning, rather than seeing them as insurmountable obstacles or reflections of faced limitations.
So failure isn't final.
Not at all. It's about focusing on learning from setbacks with curiosity and hope. If you try something and it doesn't work, a growth mindset asks, okay, what did I learn from that experience that I can apply next time? Rather than thinking, see, I'm just not good at this. It fosters persistence.
That seems really key for resilience.
It is.
Yeah.
And closely related. Garner gratitude.
Gratitude, being thankful.
Yes, consciously practicing seeing the good, even amidst hardships. It literally transforms experiences and promotes what researchers call post-traumatic growth, that positive psychological change that could result from adverse experiences.
How does gratitude do that?
It shifts your focus from what was lost or what's wrong to what remains, what you still have or what has been gained. This leads to greater overall well-being. Keeping a simple gratitude journal, even noting just 3 small things each day, can powerfully reprogram your brain to seek out the positive.
Simple but effective.
Very. And let's not forget the body. Physical activity plays a crucial role. So move more and exercise.
Gip is
Absolutely. Exercise is strongly correlated with resilience. It helps reduce stress hormones like cortisol, improves mood by releasing endorphins, and fosters overall physical well-being. Even a brisk walk can make a significant difference.
okay. Move more.
And don't underestimate the power of laughter. Laugh more.
Laugh more. Seriously.
Seriously. Research shows laughing decreases stress hormones, increases feel-good chemicals like oxytocin, and even enhances immunity. Make a conscious effort to infuse more laughter into your daily life. Watch comedies, spend time with funny friends, find humor in everyday situations. It's good medicine.
Laughter as medicine. I like it. Any final strategies?
Just 2 more quick ones. Release regret. Acknowledge it, learn any lessons it offers, and then consciously let it go to focus on the future. Dwelling on past mistakes without learning from them serves no productive purpose.
Learn and let go.
Exactly. And perhaps the most counterintuitive yet profoundly powerful strategy is to surrender.
Surrender. That sounds passive.
It sounds passive, but it's actually incredibly active. It means fully accepting the present moment as it is, without resistance. Remaining present with your struggles, facing challenges directly without avoidance. Paradoxically, letting go of the struggle against what is can unlock an innate resilience by revealing the strength that's already within you when you stop fighting reality.
It's accepting the present.
Fully accepting it. Consistency in practicing this deeply introspective type of mindfulness, this surrender, is key. It's about finding peace within the storm, not just waiting for the storm to pass.
Wow. That's a lot of practical tools. What stands out to you here? I mean, so many of these feel interconnected, don't they?
They absolutely are interconnected. That's what's so striking.
Like forgiveness seems to lead to compassion, both for self and others. Mindfulness clearly supports emotional regulation. Gratitude shifts your mindset.
Exactly. It's a beautiful synergy, isn't it? A synergy of mind, body, and spirit, all contributing to a more robust capacity for dealing with life's inevitable ups and downs. For instance, practicing gratitude can naturally lead to more self-compassion, and both are bolstered by that growth mindset that sees challenges as opportunities. It truly is a comprehensive, holistic system.
A whole system for resilience.
Yes. And speaking of interconnectedness and systems, we absolutely cannot talk about resilience without emphasizing the profound power of connection, social support.
Right. We mentioned it as a key characteristic.
Yes, but it deserves its own focus. The psychology of resilience states it unequivocally. Having a strong network of friends, family, and supportive relationships is one of the most significant predictors of resilience. It comes up again and again in the research.
So connection is king.
It's hugely important. Strong social support systems consistently lead to better outcomes in managing stress and adversity. They act as a crucial buffer against the negative effects of hardship.
Okay. And are there different kinds of support?
It's not all the same, right?
Yeah.
Excellent point. No, it's not all the same. Our sources break down social support into different valuable forms, each playing a unique role in building resilience.
Let's hear them.
Okay, first, there's emotional support. This is probably what most people think of first. It includes expressions of empathy, love, trust, care.
Someone listening, understanding.
Exactly. It helps individuals feel profoundly understood and validated, providing crucial emotional comfort and reassurance. Think of a friend listening intently without judgment after you've had a really difficult day. That's pure emotional support.
Okay. Emotional support. What's next?
Then we have instrumental support.
Instrumental, like tools.
Kind of. It's tangible assistance and practical resources. Things like financial help, maybe providing temporary shelter during a crisis, or helping with daily tasks like childcare, or bringing over a meal when someone's sick.
Practical help.
Yes, it alleviates practical burden during a crisis, which frees up mental and emotional energy for coping. If your car breaks down, a neighbor offering you a ride to work is instrumental support. It solves a concrete problem.
Got it. Emotional, instrumental. What else?
Third is informational support.
Giving information.
Precisely. Providing guidance, advice, relevant information to help individuals make informed decisions. This could be a mentor offering career advice, or maybe a community group sharing details about available resources after a local disaster. Access to accurate and timely information empowers proactive steps.
Knowledge is power.
In many ways, yes. And finally, there's appraisal support.
Appraisal, like evaluating something.
Sort of. This type of support involves feedback and encouragement that helps individuals reframe their perceptions of crises. It helps them see challenges as opportunities for growth and learning, rather than just threats.
Helping someone see it differently.
Exactly. This positive appraisal, often coming from social networks, can foster optimism and self-efficacy. For example, a colleague reminding you of your past successes when you're doubting yourself after a setback. They're helping you appraise this situation more constructively, seeing it as a chance to learn, not a sign of failure.
Wow. Emotional, instrumental, informational, appraisal. It really shows how a strong social network can be a comprehensive safety net. It's not just about having someone to vent to, though that's important too.
Absolutely. That venting is emotional support and vital.
But it's also about practical help, wise counsel, and even getting help reframing your entire perspective.
Precisely. It covers so many bases. And this idea extends beyond just our individual relationships to the broader concept of community resilience.
Community resilience, what's that?
Well, as Jamila Martinez note, community resilience involves things like strengthening social cohesion, promoting communication and collaboration, and fostering a sense of shared responsibility and solidarity within a larger group.
So the whole community working together.
Yes. Resilient communities, whether we're talking about a neighborhood, a city, or even an online group, provide additional sources of support and resources. They act as a collective buffer against adversity.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Think about after a hurricane or another natural disaster. A community with strong resilience might quickly organize volunteer cleanup crews, set up food banks, create communication networks to check on vulnerable residents. They demonstrate a collective adaptive capacity that individuals alone might lack.
The whole is greater than the sum of its parts.
In many ways, yes. But even with strong personal and community support, it's also crucial to acknowledge that while developing your own resourcefulness is vital, it's equally essential to know when to ask for professional or external help.
Right. You can't always do it alone.
Exactly. Very well.
Yeah.
Mind stresses this point really well. They provide clear examples of resources that can offer assistance when needed.
Like what?
Things like reading books about others who have overcome similar challenges. Bibliotherapy, essentially. Joining online message boards or forums for ongoing peer support. Seeking psychotherapy from a qualified mental health professional to develop new coping skills and process experiences. Or attending support groups to connect with others facing similar struggles and realize you're not alone.
So there are lots of options.
Lots of options. And the key is recognizing that the act of reaching out, of asking for help, is itself a profound act of resilience. It takes strength to acknowledge you need support.
That's a really important point. It raises a question, though. If you're struggling, how do you know when it's time to reach out for that external help? Like, what are the signs? Because as you said, it takes resilience just to ask for help sometimes. It means acknowledging vulnerability.
That's a really perceptive question and a critical one for self-awareness.
Yeah.
It's not always easy to know, but some common indicators include when your usual coping strategies just aren't working anymore. You feel stuck or consistently overwhelmed for an extended period.
Feeling stuck. Okay.
If you notice a significant decline in your daily functioning, maybe you're really struggling to concentrate at work, or you're neglecting basic self-care like hygiene or eating properly. Maybe you're withdrawing from social interactions you used to enjoy, or experiencing persistent feelings of hopelessness, emptiness, or panic. Those are strong signals.
Changes in functioning.
Yes. Also, significant changes in sleep patterns, sleeping way too much or too little, or major shifts in appetite. And definitely, if you find yourself relying heavily on maladaptive coping behaviors like excessive substance use to get through the day, that's a clear sign it's time to consider seeking professional help.
So it's about noticing these patterns.
Noticing the patterns and acknowledging that the goal isn't to struggle alone indefinitely. The goal is to build a robust support system, and sometimes that absolutely includes professionals who can offer specialized tools, perspectives, and guidance.
Right. Build the whole system. That makes sense.
And as we consider the breadth and depth of resilience, thinking about systems, it's also critical to move beyond the individual perspective and acknowledge the profound impact of cultural nuances and systemic factors.
Culture. How does that play in?
Massively. Jamil Martinez emphasized that cultural considerations play a significant role in how people perceive, experience, and respond to adversity. This isn't just a minor detail. It fundamentally shapes the very fabric of resilience for different communities and individuals.
So resilience isn't universal in how it looks.
The core capacity might be, but how it's expressed and cultivated can vary hugely. Think about the difference between collectivism versus individualism, for example.
Okay.
In many collectivist cultures, individuals often rely heavily on extended social support networks, strong family ties, community cohesion to cope with challenges. During a family crisis, you might see multiple family members, neighbors, even distant relatives, pooling resources and providing emotional support almost automatically.
The group helps the individual.
Exactly. In contrast, more individualistic cultures might place a greater emphasis on self-reliance, personal agency, individual problem solving. While both approaches have their strength, their default coping mechanisms in times of stress will look very different. One might naturally turn inward first, the other outward.
Interesting. What else about culture matters?
Cultural beliefs and values profoundly shape how adversity is even perceived and therefore how it's coped with.
How?
Well, some cultures might view adversity primarily as, say, a test of faith. This might lead individuals to seek spiritual guidance or engage in communal prayer as their primary coping mechanisms.
Okay.
Other cultures or subcultures might interpret hardship more as a result of societal inequality or injustice. This perspective might prompt collective action, advocacy for social justice, and efforts towards systemic change, rather than purely individual adaptation or acceptance. These differing worldviews directly influence the chosen coping mechanisms and the path to what is perceived as resilience within that context.
So the why changes the how.
Precisely. Even language and emotional expression play a significant part. Language barriers, for instance, can severely hinder access to vital mental health resources, especially for immigrant or minority communities who may not find services in their native tongue or from providers who understand their cultural background.
That's a huge barrier.
Huge. Furthermore, cultural norms around emotional expression, whether stoicism is valued over open communication, for instance, can profoundly shape help-seeking behaviors. In some cultures, internalizing distress might be seen as a sign of strength, making it much harder for individuals to voice their struggles and seek support. Others might encourage open sharing and communal grieving. Neither is inherently better, but they lead to different approaches.
Right. Different norms for expressing pain.
Exactly. And it's also vital to understand intersectionality.
Intersectionality, meaning?
Meaning that cultural identity doesn't exist in a vacuum. It intersects with other aspects of diversity, such as race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, socioeconomic status, and so on.
Okay, multiple identities interacting.
Yes, and this means that marginalized communities often face multiple overlapping systemic barriers to healthcare, housing, education, employment that can significantly exacerbate their vulnerability during crises.
So some groups face more hurdles.
Far more hurdles, often. For example, an individual who is both a racial minority and living in poverty might face far greater obstacles in recovering from a natural disaster or economic downturn than someone from a more privileged background. Addressing these deep-seated inequalities requires a comprehensive approach. It needs to include not just individual resilience-building skills, but also cultural competence and support systems, active social justice advocacy, and community empowerment initiatives.
This is a huge point because a one-size-fits-all approach just won't work when we talk about something as deeply personal and culturally informed as resilience.
Exactly. It simply won't be effective.
Understanding these cultural nuances and systemic barriers feels just as important as understanding the individual psychology, maybe even more so sometimes, for providing true support.
I would agree. It's essential for a complete picture. And, as with all scientific inquiry, it's important we also acknowledge the limitations of the current research we've discussed today. These limitations often point towards future directions for deeper understanding.
Right. Science is always evolving. What were some limitations?
Well, for example, the studies by Praveen et al.
Mhm.
And Cow et al., which gave us those valuable insights into ACEs and coping styles.
Yeah.
They both highlighted a few important limitations that scientists are actively working to address. First, they were largely cross-sectional in nature.
Meaning a snapshot in time.
Exactly. They captured data at a single point, like taking a photo. While that's valuable, it makes it difficult to definitively establish causal links. We can see correlations like ACEs are linked to lower resilience, but to say definitively that one causes the other requires different types of studies.
Like following people over time.
Precisely. Longitudinal research studies that follow participants over extended periods, maybe years or even decades, are desperately needed to fully clarify these causal connections and understand how resilience develops and changes across the lifespan.
Okay. What else?
Second, both studies relied primarily on self-report measures, asking people questions about themselves.
Which can be biased.
It can be. While valuable for capturing subjective experiences, self-reporting can sometimes lead to biases. Participants might unconsciously over-report positive traits or under-report sensitive experiences like a history of ACEs or current mental health symptoms, maybe due to social desirability or simply memory recall issues.
Right.
Future research might employ more systematic methods, like in-depth individual interviews, or even incorporate physiological measures of stress to get a more robust and nuanced understanding.
Okay. Anything else?
Third, the focus on specific populations, like university students in Pakistan or youth in China, means the findings might not directly apply to everyone. Not to clinical populations already diagnosed with disorders, maybe not older adults, or other diverse groups in different cultural contexts. Generalizability is always a consideration in psychological research. What holds true for one group might not fully translate to another.
So need more diverse samples.
Exactly. And finally, there were some minor inconsistencies noted with findings from previous research, particularly regarding the precise mediating effect of certain specific coping styles. This just suggests that coping mechanisms are highly complex. They're likely influenced by a whole myriad of factors: personal traits, developmental stage, diverse cultural environments. It points to the inherent complexity of human experience and resilience. It's not simple.
No, definitely not simple. But it's important to remember, like you said, that science is always building on itself. Even with these fantastic insights we've discussed, there are always more questions to explore. It's an ongoing journey of discovery, not a final destination.
Precisely. Well said. And these limitations naturally lead to exciting future horizons for research and hopefully broader impact. There's a strong call in the field for more of that ongoing longitudinal research we mentioned, and also for robust interdisciplinary collaboration. We need psychologists working alongside public health experts, policymakers, educators, community stakeholders.
Bringing everyone together.
Exactly. This comprehensive approach is essential if we want to develop more effective, culturally sensitive, and widespread interventions and policies. We need to address resilience at multiple levels, from the individual to the family, the community, and even systemic levels, like addressing those inequalities we talked about.
A multi-level approach.
Yes. Because ultimately, understanding and actively fostering resilience contributes significantly to preventing psychological symptoms from escalating into full-blown mental disorders. This is especially critical in high-risk groups who may have experienced significant adversity. It's really about proactively building protective factors.
Protective factors.
Yeah, factors that empower individuals and communities to navigate life's inevitable challenges with greater strength, clarity, and a profound sense of agency. It's about shifting the focus from just surviving to truly thriving.
That's a powerful goal, thriving. So let's try and wrap this up. We've journeyed through the science of resilience today. Quite a deep dive.
It really has been.
From understanding its definition, not just toughness, but a flexible, learnable skill.
Right. Adaptability.
To how childhood experiences, those ACEs, can shape it, but don't have to dictate the future.
The mediating role of resilience.
Crucial.
And we explored the diverse characteristics that make someone resilient: problem solving, connections, emotional regulation, self-compassion.
That whole cluster of skills and mindsets.
We looked at the power of both adaptive coping strategies, the toolbox analogy,
Choosing the right tool.
and the crucial multiplying role of social support in all its forms: emotional, practical, informational.
And appraisal. Don't forget appraisal.
Right. And we even dipped into practical, science-backed techniques from CBT and mindfulness that you, listening right now, can start integrating into your life today. Things like reframing thoughts, mindful breathing, self-compassion breaks.
Concrete actions you can take.
Yeah.
Indeed. And what's truly fascinating to me, stepping back, is how interconnected all these elements really are.
Yeah, that synergy you mentioned. Exactly. Your mindset, your actions, your relationship with yourself, and your connections with others, they all weave together. They form your unique resilience blueprint. And it's not static. It's a dynamic interplay, constantly evolving as you practice and learn.
So remember, if you're listening, this deep dive isn't about somehow avoiding the storms of life, because let's face it, those are inevitable.
Unfortunately, yes.
It's about building a stronger, more flexible ship to sail through them.
I like that metaphor. A stronger ship.
And the truly great news, the hopeful message that ran through all this research, is that you already have the capacity within you to cultivate this strength. It's a muscle that gets stronger with practice, with intention.
Absolutely. It's inherently human. And perhaps that raises an important final question for reflection.
Oh, what's that?
Well, if resilience is about not just bouncing back, but actively finding growth and meaning, even in the face of adversity, what challenging experience in your past could you perhaps revisit? Not to rehash the pain necessarily, but maybe to actively search for the lessons learned from it, to look for that silver lining, however small, to identify the hidden strengths that emerged because of that struggle. And then, how might those insights, those strengths you discovered, inform your resilience and your actions today, helping you shape a stronger future?
Wow. Revisiting the past not for pain, but for lessons and strengths. That's a powerful thought to leave everyone with, a way to continue your own deep dive into what makes you uniquely resilient.